So we have the perfect guest to discuss this. All right. A brilliant guest, as a matter of fact. Mr. David Frum is here. He's a staff writer at The Atlantic. And what's more, okay, this is important. He is the new host of The Atlantic's new podcast, The David Frum Show, or as they say, eponymously named. So the first episode just dropped today. He did a phenomenal deep dive into Trump's tariff disaster, which is precisely why we have him on today. We're going to talk about his new podcast and other things. But first, David, welcome in. We appreciate it. How are you joining? How are you holding on to this roller coaster right
now? With tight grip fists. I want to mention something else about my background that's maybe relevant to our conversation today, which is I was born in Canada. And I still spend a lot of time there. And I have been involved in the U.S.-Canada trade issue since the 1980s. As a young person, I campaigned for the U.S.-Canada trade agreement that became NAFTA. I worked in the Bush White House, where I worked very closely on the Mexico file and was part of the team that welcomed Vicente Fox for the state visit in 2001. So North American open trade has been at the center of my interests all my life. I am just heartbroken and enraged by what Donald Trump has done in the past few years.
Tell me about that. Tell me why before we get into some of the stuff that happened to you.
Well, the long thing you read, I don't know if you call it a tweet or it reminded me of that scene in The Wizard of Oz when the wizard reads the diplomas with a lot of wherefores and thereafters, and it sounds impressive. But understand, the damage here has not been undone. Tariffs of the three biggest partners of the United States, trade partners, are China, Mexico, and Canada. The Canada and Mexico tariffs are all still there. Tariffs on autos, tariffs on steel, tariffs on aluminum, tariffs on potash, an important fertilizer, tariffs on Mexico is subject to many tariffs. So Trump has done tremendous damage to that trading relationship. And although this statement today pauses the tariffs on the penguins, the United States does not do a lot of business with those penguins. The people with whom it does the most business, they are still in a situation where nobody is going to make any investments. And while the panic in the financial markets was calm today, the slowdown in investment and the onset of the recession, those have not been held back. Those are still coming.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you said that because I wondered, like, how is this a win? How did anybody move? And countries speak to all of the departments that he named. They, of course, they're calling. I'm sure they said, did you talk to such and such, whatever? Yeah, we talk to them all the time. Get me a list of some of the countries you have spoken to over the last couple of days about whatever, and then we'll mention them. Again, for Donald Trump, it has to sound like a win.
Yeah.
And so this is Scott Bessent, okay, saying that this was Trump's plan all along. Here it is.
This was driven by the president's strategy. He and I had a long talk on Sunday, and this was his strategy all along. And that, you might even say that he goaded China into a bad position. They responded. They have shown themselves to the world to be the bad actors. And we are willing to cooperate with our allies and with our trading partners who did not retaliate. It wasn't a hard message. Don't retaliate. Things will turn out well.
David, please make that make sense for me.
Okay. So what Bessent and Trump are doing is they're in a position of someone who's just blown a bugle and started an avalanche of snow. But the snow hasn't crushed the village yet. So in that interval between the time the snow crushes the village, you can say this was exactly our plan. But in a very few minutes, the snow is going to hit the village and everyone can see what nonsense this is. No one is this is Bessent's plan was let's mobilize all of our trading partners to join with us in cooperating against China. You may remember from the Obama years something called the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That was the idea a decade ago. Let's get Canada and Mexico and Chile and Peru and Australia and Japan and South Korea and Malaysia and Indonesia and the Philippines and Vietnam, and we'll all cooperate and put pressure together on the Chinese. Trump canceled that in his first week of his first term. So Bessent's idea is let's put that back together again. Only the problem is he's insulted everybody. He's harmed everybody. And there's going to be no mood. I mean, I can speak to this from the Canadian perspective. I was just in Toronto yesterday talking to a room full of bankers. There's no mood to help out on this. And what Trump and the best people around him keep saying is, we have the cards because we're stronger and more powerful. And the United States certainly is stronger and more powerful than, for example, Canada. But when you say to the Canadians, look, what we want from you is the annihilation of you as a country, it turns out that people will put up with a lot of pain if you say, well, you're trying to extinguish us. You want us to be the 51st state. We're not content with the relationship we have. And you started it, and everyone in Canada knows you started it, and you started it for no reason. I think he's going to find that there isn't a lot of cooperation. And right now they're on this fantasy. And meanwhile, the pause will cushion the impact on Americans, because everything that the United States gets from China, from like hinges and screws to sophisticated equipment, importers have 90 days to build the largest inventory they can of all of that stuff. So there'll be giant mountains of it in every warehouse in the United States. But Trump has put a stop to U.S.-China trade effectively, and he's thrown tremendous mistrust into U.S. trade with everybody else, and he's slowed investment, and that's going to slow the economy.
They were, hanging tough for a while. And I'm going to play a couple of things just because I like to show people the evidence. This is them all the times that they're saying that Trump would not pause tariffs. Here it is.
I'm doing what I want to do with respect to the tariffs.
Would you be open to a pause in tariffs to allow for negotiations?
Well, we're not looking at that.
The president was asked and answered this yesterday. He said he's not considering an extension or a delay. I spoke to him before this briefing. That was not his mindset. He expects that these tariffs are going to go into effect.
There's no postponing. They are definitely going to stay in place for days and weeks. That is sort of obvious. The president needs to reset global trade. I don't think there's any chance that President Trump's going to back off his tariffs. This is the reordering of global trade.
We're going to hold the course, and this has been years in the building, years in the making.
Okay, so then you have that. This is from Pete Hamby, and I believe that it is true. Pete Hamby tweeted this out today. He said, Trump advisor, this was a plan. Trump advisor, this was a plan. Trump advisor, this was a plan. And then Trump, the markets were panicking, so I backed off. As a matter of fact, that is what he said today. Basically, I believe this is evidence that he admits that he caved because he was concerned about the sentiment here in America. Let me play it, and then you can respond, David. Here it is.
Yeah. You started the morning saying be cool, and just a few hours later, there was a pause put in on the tariffs. Can you walk us through your thinking about why you decided to put a 90-day pause?
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, they were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid, unlike these champions, because we have a big job to do. No other president would have done what I did. No other president. I know the presidents, they wouldn't have done it. And it had to be done. What was happening to us on trade, not only with, if you look at it, not only with China, but China was by far the biggest abuser in history, and others also, but.
There you go.
Yeah, so people who are unsympathetic to Trump, and I am very unsympathetic to Trump, want to believe that what happened here is a story of he did something, it was stupid, he backed off, he caved. But it's important to bear in mind that a lot of the damaging things he's done are still there. What is still there is there's a 10% tariff on everybody. That's still there. There are special tariffs on America's 2 of 3 most important trading partners, Canada and Mexico. Those are still there. The tariffs on autos, the tariffs on steel, the tariffs on aluminum, the tariffs on potash, which is the main source of fertilizer for American farms. Those are all still there. The rancor and mistrust between the European Union and the United States, between Canada and the United States, between Mexico and the United States, that's all still there. And what he's also got is, it doesn't matter, the tariff on China, 104, 125%, you've banned it. And what that means is after this buildup of inventories, we're going to have an epidemic of smuggling. I mean, tell American kids that the new Nintendo, when it becomes available, is going to cost $450 in Toronto and $660 in New York. How are people going to respond to that price difference? They're going to make it go away by crossing the Canadian border and buying Nintendos in Toronto and Vancouver and smuggling them back across the border. We're going to have something on scenes out of Prohibition, except it's going to be Nintendo sets and athletic shoes.
Look, let me just tell you, David, I like to be honest with the audience, and I'm not an anybody hater, right? But I like the truth. I hate lies, and I hate that I feel it is my belief that Donald Trump is using the American people, using us as sort of leverage and we're the collateral in all of these, his negotiation process. This is Charlie Gasparino, who is conservative, or at least comes from a conservative angle over on Fox News and the Fox Business Channel. And Charlie Gasparino is saying the exact same thing that I said to my team before I even heard him say it during our producer meeting just moments before this show. This is Charlie Gasparino on Fox saying that Donald Trump caved, and what you said, that what he's done has done harm not only to the American people, but to the world economy. Here it is.
At the moment, as you can imagine, the art of the deals all over the Twitter sphere right now, as people say, I mean, maybe this is the way he planned it. To John's point, Charlie, about the Treasury Secretary saying maybe you could say that he goaded China into a bad position for themselves. Well, don't retaliate. Things will work out well, he said.
I mean, I want to tell you right now that Donald Trump outsmarted the world. Trust me. I'm an American. I support my president. But that's not really what happened here, from what I understand. And I know I'll get pushback, but here's what it is. First off, we should point out that one of the good things about this is that Scott Bessent is finally in the White House. He's finally leading this. I mean, up until a couple of days ago, it was Lutnick, it was Peter Navarro, the Commerce Secretary, the trade advisor, very much hawks. Now it's Scott Bessent, who believes in cutting deals as opposed to, just just putting these tariffs out there and let's be a mercantilistic economy. That's number one. But number two, let's recall what happened overnight. And from what I understand, and I'm getting this from people that are talking to the White House, what happened in the bond market overnight, the spike in yields on the 30-year and the 10-year bond, which showed that people were dumping our bonds. And who were those people dumping our bonds? Japan, the biggest holder of bonds, was selling bonds. That's what I'm getting from some very big money managers. China, maybe to some extent, but it was largely Japan and others. If you have a mass sale of bonds, that means people are losing confidence in the U.S. economy, on the ability to do deals with us. And from what I understand, this is what forced the hand of this 90-day reprieve. Now, is it a good thing? Are people coming to the table? Yeah. But if you read between the lines, or not even what Scott Bessent said, we have no deals, right? There's nobody that is really there saying this is what we're going to do, and they paused it anyway. So,
what Gasparino was doing there was really useful information for his Fox audience. He was telling the Fox audience as much truth as a Fox audience can take, but it's not the whole story, because much of the tariff apparatus, unfortunately, Trump did not completely cave. Much of the tariff apparatus remains in place, and it's going to do terrible harm. So think of it like it's like a bar, saloon bar, and there's a shot of cyanide, there's a shot of arsenic, there's a shot of hellebane, you name the poisons. And at the end is the last in the sequence. And Trump said, you know what, we're not going to drink that one. But all the other shots, the United States is still, there's still the tariffs on Mexico and Canada. There's still the tariffs, the 10% tariff on everybody. We are still heading, and there's still this question of, imagine you're contemplating a big investment that would serve the American market. You have no idea what the terms are, and they can change any day. So we're going to have an investment slowdown, and we're going to have a spike in shopping as people stock up, but then we're going to have a crash in shopping later once the tariffs hit, and above all, we're going to have an economic slowdown and high interest rates at the same time. So the outlook is not good. And it's all one man's doing. And it's just driven by ignorance and malice and arrogance and lack of regard for the lives of the people he's supposed to be governing.
Mm-hmm. To your point, to Charlie Gasparino's point, it was the bond market, really, what he saw happening overnight with the bond market. That was it. He admitted to it, as a matter of fact. Here he is.
Let's take guts, believe me.
Was it the bond markets that persuaded you to reverse course?
I was watching the bond market. The bond market is very tricky. I was watching it, but if you look at it now, it's beautiful. The bond market right now is beautiful. But yeah, I saw last night where people were getting a little queasy. I think everything had. Well, the big move wasn't what I did today. The big move was what I did on Liberation Day. We had Liberation Day in America. We were liberated from all of the horrible deals that were made, all of the horrible trade deals that were made. And I was helped by people just like this, senator, congressman, and friends, right? And We had great help in the Senate. Our Republican senators have been amazing. They stood tall. And likewise in the House. And John.
Okay, so a lot of that's not true. Obviously, he pivoted to Liberation Day. He said, "Okay, that's it," but I don't want to talk about that. And then he said they had the Senate. Pretty much the Senate stood together, but there were Republican lawmakers who were not for this, including from my home state of Louisiana, John Kennedy, who was out on the cable news on the circuit saying, "I don't know if this is good, and Donald Trump will have to face whatever the repercussions are."
Look, when he said this, he said an interesting thing in that. I mean, nonsense Liberation Day. I mean, the liberation is that everyone has to pay more for everything. But what he said is we tore up all these trade deals. So the plan is you're going to go to Canada, you're going to go to Mexico, you're going to go to the Europeans and say, we want you to sign a new trade deal. And they'll say, what happened to the old trade deal? I said, well, I ripped that up. In fact, because I don't feel I'm bound by any deal at all. Whenever I don't like a deal, I just ignore it. Oh, so I should sign a new deal with you that binds me but doesn't bind you. This deal contains a clause that you can cancel it at any time, and I can't. Why would anybody do business with you? There's going to be, I think there are going to be no new trade deals because his word is worthless, and he's made the United States' word worthless.
Thanks everyone for watching. Your support means the world to us. So make sure you hit the like button and you subscribe to our channel to make sure that you never ever miss a video. We're live every day, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We drop even more content at 2 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you want more Don Lemon Show content, we'd love for you to become a member of the Lemon community, where you will receive access to special community posts. You'll get exclusive content and members-only live shows. So head over to our channel page or click the join button on this video. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate your love and your support, and we will see you next time.